On this week's episode of 90 Degrees, we are joined by the mighty Jason Radowitz, a writer for web pages, including but not limited to Pickswise, Odds Jam, and Betting Pros, to name a few. Today we're talking about the daily process of a bettor, some angles in the MLB, and Jason's time as a graduate assistant for his alma mater's basketball team. Let's dive into the sharp side and look at the right angles in sports betting.
Big bomb bangers, boogie down.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jews and Gentiles,
bangers,
sharps and squares, and anybody else I forgot. Welcome back to episode 13 of 90 Degrees, the show where we discuss the right sports betting angles. I'm your host, Kevin Davis, and today we're welcoming in guest Jason Radowitz, who you can find on Twitter at Jason_Radowitz. Jason, what's the word?
What's the word? College football bowl season. Got some really great games going on recently, so that's been lots of fun. Betting on that stuff, of course, and it's almost the new year, so we're already heading into 2023. More sports to bet on, of course. So yeah, you gotta love it. It's the season.
So now, college basketball is like something where you have an unusual connection to it compared to other people,
Yep.
because you used to be a graduate assistant. Tell us about your journey from graduate assistant to college basketball bettor.
Yeah, so I think when I was first a manager for the team, when I was, I was a manager at my sophomore year into senior year, and at that time I wanted to do whatever I could to be a part of the team and like travel with them. And so I talked to the coach and I was like, hey, I would like to figure out a way to like help more. I'm like, here's some analytics I could provide and help out with, figuring out different lineups and figuring out different, strategies on what's best to do in the game. And that one year where I linked up with a mathematics professor, linked up with him, and we created the winningest team in program history that year. And so I realized like maybe I know a little bit something, and maybe it wasn't just luck. So did that, and I realized I had a passion for the numbers and sports, and just figuring out the analytics and stuff with that. So eventually that kind of took off, and I enjoyed that so much that I realized that I would want to do that full time. But I didn't really love the traveling aspect of things. So being a college basketball coach was fun and all, but like I go to the gym and I like to do other things as well. And I'm not a big traveler, so I didn't really love that aspect of college basketball with all the traveling. So instead, I decided to stay home and bet on sports. And when I first started, I was not a winning bettor at all. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like all those other different squares, betting on sports. But as I learned from the actual professional bettors and the ones that actually profit, that's when things took a turn, and now we're here.
So I'm guessing you started betting before your home state of New Jersey legalized it.
Yeah, I wasn't really allowed because I was with the basketball team as a manager, but it wasn't really like, nobody was really paying attention. But I think I do remember using like, a site called Bovada, like some of those offshore sites, and I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't even putting that much money on it in the first place. And of course, I was doing some fantasy sports, which I don't do anymore at all. But that's kind of what I was doing. Obviously, wasn't betting on college basketball, obviously, but just in general, I was maybe betting $5, $10. I wasn't making any money anyway. So, I didn't have any money to spend on sports betting. But yeah, I just love the analytics portion of college basketball, just looking at Ken Palm every single day. And that just gave me the itch to eventually sports bet once I finished with college basketball at the University of Hartford.
Were you ever aware of the spreads on the Hartford games? Because I know that James Lang, who was on the show, he played D2 college football. He couldn't bet on it, but he occasionally would look up the spreads in the Detroit newspaper.
Yeah, so like ESPN would always have it like underneath, like in the score, like underneath like where the box score would be. It would say like what the spread was, and before the game you'd see it, and like yeah, that was it. It was so much fun seeing like if we could beat it. But sports betting, even when I was like a manager even as a graduate assistant, like just 3 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, sports betting wasn't really that as popular as it is now, with all these new sites coming to New Jersey and all the other, all the other, states being legalized. So nobody was really betting on Hartford basketball. It's just, it's not a Power Five school. It's, a small little, school. It's nothing. But I think it's funny now. It's like you go on Twitter and you'll write like Hartford basketball. Like 2 years ago, a year ago, you were at Hartford basketball and you have all these guys watching the game and like crapping on all the players and like just telling these players that they suck. And I'm like, I wish that was a part of when I was a manager and graduate assistant. It would have been cool for people to like, watch our games. But like the reality is nobody watched those games yet. But now because sports betting is so popular, people are actually going to ESPN Plus and like watching these games that nobody would have cared about before, which I think is great just for the sport, just to get more popularity in the game.
Now, is this good financially for the college basketball programs? Are they not seeing it trickle down?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure on the financials, but I'll say that with NIL, I think that college basketball, just college athletics in general, is going to get very interesting very soon. Um, I think that the NIL obviously won't be helping with a level playing field, but then like if you go to like the college football scene, when you have a bracket of like 12 different teams playing in the college football playoff, I think that really we could see a more of a level playing field just because now more recruits have a vision of winning a championship with a different university than an Alabama or a Clemson or Ohio State or a Michigan or a Georgia. I think that could change, a little bit of college football in terms of the level playing field. But that's to be seen. We don't really know yet. But yeah.
Now, is there like anything that you think is not being factored into college basketball spreads as well as some of the more major leagues?
I don't think we're seeing anything yet. I think I really don't think that there's much. I have to think about that one, but uh, I think like the a lot more of the time the first half totals are like very wacky for all different kinds of these sports books. I think that's where you could potentially find an edge. And I think sometimes they don't take into account fouling towards the end of games and all of that. But overall, I don't know if I've seen anything like drastic.
I mean, I've noticed that the first and second half spreads and blowouts could be priced much better. Like, there's a lot of
Mhm.
opportunities for betting on underdogs to cover a huge first half spread. If you see that they're, not an up tempo team, and even though they get blown out, they're usually somewhat competitive in the beginning.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think that uh, a lot of coaches what they'll end up doing when they're in a game, like they're a small team going up against a really good team, is they'll obviously try to limit the possessions to stay in the game as long as they can. So I think that there is definitely some value there, and that's not really in analytics because the game plan kind of changes. If that smaller team was playing, a conference team, it'd be a lot different. Their pace of play would be a lot different than when they go up against a team like Gonzaga, Alabama, or any of those major basketball teams like UConn.
What about alternate lines? Do you think that they price those appropriately?
Probably not. I think in basketball, I haven't really paying attention to the alternate lines just because, like, any team can win by one. But then in football, for example, you go minus 2.5 or minus 6.5. I think that's, an area where you can definitely, profit and make some money just because, a 3.5 or let's say like a 5.5 is usually almost the same, odds as a minus 6.5, which would make no sense because how many games finish at six? I mean, actually, some do, but we'll say 4.5 or whatever. But either way, when you go to those, the threes and the sevens, when it's usually how a game finishes, the spreads are a little bit off there for sure.
I mean, I've noticed like that 3-point shooting heavy teams. Like, there's a lot of
Mhm.
variance between their mean performance and the outliers because they can
Yeah,
have a game where they're just drilling them, or they can have a game where they're all bricks.
that was Arkansas last night against LSU. They were over 13 in the first half from
I
three,
mean, Arkansas
and
is a
that,
great example because they're an up tempo
yep,
team, so that's going to increase some variance.
yep.
Although that's obviously baked into the total, it may not be baked into the alternate spreads or
Mhm.
alternate lines or even reverse teaser lines if you can get reverse teasers, by the way.
There you
But
go.
Arkansas, not only are they up tempo, but they're a strong defensive team. So
Yeah.
there's so many different variables to take into account there. And
Yeah.
if you're
That's
betting like a huge plus money alternate line, variance is your friend. But if you're
yeah.
taking the juicy, like the chalky alternate line, then you don't want variance.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would say that underdogs have been, I think if you find the right scenario, underdogs can be very obviously very profitable in college basketball. We've seen, again, just like March Madness tournament, for example, like these teams are definitely better than they've ever been. These mid-major teams and smaller teams, and they kind of get awake for these types of games. Like when I was at Hartford, we beat Rutgers, we beat Boston College a couple of times. We had some really good games against some really, some Power Five teams where like we just kind of woke up for those games, but then like don't remind us that we lost the game to Maine that same year, that we beat Rutgers and Boston College. So, that's just that. College basketball is definitely high variance, and it's also lots of fun to bet though.
Now, how do you, because the sports books really don't like offering college basketball, they offer it only because everybody else is. Just because there's so many games, they have to keep up with so much. Like, how do you find the spots where a player is injured and it's not appropriately updated in the line?
Yeah, see, I don't really pay attention to that. I let the other sharps pay attention to it for me, and then I see the line movement, and then if another site doesn't change their line, I'm able to jump on that. So I'm basically watching other sharp action and going off of those sharps to find different areas, and then I'll look at Ken Palm, look at the analytics, and then figure out see if there's any injury reports or whatever, and then from there, that's when I'll decide if I want to make a bet or not. So I let the kind of that the news that's not out yet, that's already kind of out to other to other odds makers, and I let that help me make my decisions.
So you kind of do like a mixture of top down and bottom up. You're looking to see the way the market moves, and then you're looking to find out why and see if it's an overreaction.
Yeah. But then you also got to move quick because you know that the other sports book's going to be moving their line pretty soon too. So you got to do it at a very quick pace because otherwise you're not going to be able to get that opportunity to bet whatever you might be looking at.
Would you ever look and say, okay, there's this injury news and people are overreacting. I'm going to wait for the lines to stop moving and bet on the team with the injured player?
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Because I
Again,
know COVID, I was using
yeah,
that approach.
yeah. So that's
Anytime I
during
heard COVID
COVID.
outbreak, I'd just
Oh
wait
my God.
for all the lines
Yeah,
to stop and bet on the team with the outbreak.
that
Or if
that
it's
was.
basketball and a COVID outbreak, I'd bet
Uh-huh.
on like the first quarter or third quarter spread only of that team.
Yeah,
Because I figure
that
they're going
was.
to be exhausted on the second quarter when they don't have a bench.
Yeah, that was that was so ridiculous during COVID. But yeah, I mean that's definitely possible too. But like I at the end of the day, I trust where the sharpest books are going, and then I kind of just base off my opinion off of that, along with the stats that I see. And if they both align, then that's a go for me moving forward.
So now you do all this work, you're slaying it on a sport the sports books don't want to offer. What do the sports books do when you keep winning? What have been your
Yeah,
experiences so far?
yeah, they limit a lot. There's I'll tell you, there's only one sports book that has actually never limited me whatsoever. The rest limited uh, to a very solid amount, but I'm still able to get enough action where I could make enough money. But it's obviously very ridiculous.
Now, what sports book is it that lets you do whatever you want?
It's Caesars. Caesars is very very good. They rarely limit, and if they're limiting, it's because you're trying to bet at a high rate money, or you're just on a different type of market that just would not be bet as much. But Caesars has been easily the best sports book out there by far when it comes to that.
I mean, obviously, because you're in New Jersey, you have the Canby books, and they're going to limit you pretty quick.
I don't even bother with them anymore. For the
So
worst.
you don't even try and beard in. You're
I
just
can't.
done.
I could put $100 wager in, and it'll come back at $10. Like it's just ridiculous.
I mean, I guess your point is, let's say you get your neighbor down the street, be like, "Yo, can you sign up for an account?" And then I sign
Yeah,
in. I
yeah,
mean, but
yeah.
I guess you don't
That's
even bother with that.
about that. I mean, I, give it like 5 bets, and then they'll be gone too. And then you have to go down to the next store. And by the time you like the year is done, you have another like a whole freaking block to get through. It's ridiculous.
So Canby bearding doesn't work because after 5 bets, they kind of realize you're sharp, but they sniff out your past behavior.
Yeah, it's those candy books are easily the worst. Um, and then the other books like they limit, but it's not as bad. I will say DraftKings has been on my rear end pretty recently, so there's that. But um, I think like I wish that all the books would act like Superbook, for example. Superbook, they just kind of like limit you to $100 for every single wager. So at least I know like what I'm capable of getting every single time I open that sports book, compared to all these other books where they'll give you like the most weird numbers. Like you could put into DraftKings you could put in $250 and it'll come back at like 61.72, and you're like, but I just know I just love going to Superbook and knowing that all right, I could wager this much. Let me put that wager in, and they give me no problems. So I appreciate that. So I give Superbook credit for that at least.
Now you bet a lot of Major League Baseball, for example, you do a lot of.
Yeah.
Um, do they let you bet at the normal limits for Major League Baseball, or do they look at your profile from college basketball and say, "Oh, we don't want him even touching MLB money lines"?
Yeah, so it's funny because like I was I wasn't really too limited during the baseball season, but then it got to the football season, the basketball season, and that's when things kind of took a turn. Like I said, DraftKings just got to me just recently, but like FanDuel was always pretty unrealistic, and WinBet's also pretty good. They have their own limits, but they limit like everyone to the same limit, which I appreciate as well. So um, yeah, WinBet's really good, but they normally juice up their odds. It seems like, and it's usually hard to get um, a good price. But if you do find a good price on WinBet, it's probably like too good to pass up. You should be hitting it because WinBet's probably the the least sharpest book in the world.
Ooh, those are fighting words for some of my listeners who work at WinBet.
Oh well, now they're gonna ban me. So
Maybe
there's
they'll
that.
come on the show. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be
Um,
smart.
but or maybe they offer those numbers because they tag you as sharp and they see you in the system and
Well,
they
yeah,
want to
but
kind of use
see,
you.
but it's also very rare to get a good number in the first place. Like with them, like it seems like they have a very juiced. And I also know that like I have friends in New York that use WinBet as well. New York and New Jersey um, both had different odds for the same game, multiple times. So it's very very interesting what's going on over there. But that's why you're also able to find some good lines because for whatever reason, one state is like just you know not on with the other states. It's very interesting.
Now I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about how you got onto Hartford. That you just contacted a math professor, discussed some analytics, and they gave you a graduate scholarship, and you were a graduate assistant. Like for the people out there who are listening who want to work in sports or at least want to work in college athletics as a way of paying for their education, um, is this doable at most schools, or was Hartford unusual?
I would probably say it was unusual for me because I was my freshman year. I tried to get in with a newspaper, and so I became a beat reporter for the basketball team, and that's where I created that relationship with the entire team. Um, but then they kind of realized like my Twitter following, and we talked a little bit more. They wanted me to do help with social media, and so the relationship kind of just dragged me into the program. But I would say that like I don't think that those top schools are going to worry about your social media. Like they don't need help getting your social media um, out there. But like I'll say that like I was able to create a connection with the coaches at Hartford uh, so much more than like any other than a Power Five school, for example. If you're a manager at a Power Five school, there's so many more managers, right? There's like 10 managers all running out to clean off the sweat or water that might fall, and they all run onto the court and they all run back. But that just wasn't like we had like two or three managers at a time, and like the coaches knew me by first name, and so we actually had a connection where I don't know how many managers would actually have that kind of connection with a head coach. So for me, getting into that program was very unusual. I'm always so grateful that I was able to get this opportunity. And I was also somebody that was never a part of a team before I became part of Hartford. But because of just my friendship with all of the players that grew over time, and just me recognizing and knowing about the team, and just knowing everybody's what they were good at, what they were bad at. It just kind of made sense that I would be a part of the program just because, would you rather have somebody as a graduate assistant that doesn't know anybody on the team or what their strengths or weaknesses are or what gets them going, what doesn't, the numbers, the analytics, or would you want somebody from the outside that's coming in that doesn't really know as much? You'd rather a guy like me that, everyone's comfortable with, everyone, knows who I am. And, they're, obviously we were winning when I was there because of, you know, there was times where I'd be waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to rebound balls, right? And like how many people, how many managers would actually do that? But when they see that kind of passion come out of somebody, they're ready to invest in someone like that. So I would say like the one way to get in is you know gotta find gotta create that connection, but you also need to have that availability, which for managers it's not always there in the first place. It's tough. It's really tough, and it's also like as a manager and a graduate assistant, you have a lot on your plate on top of actually going to school as well. So you're also going to school on top of doing all this, waking up early hours, traveling. You're doing all the figuring out all the meals for everyone. You're the one doing all the appointments and the hotels and like airfare and stuff like that. So it's a lot of work, especially also doing school and maintaining your grades there. But at the end of the day, like I wouldn't have traded it for anything. But I would say that I was probably one of the more lucky ones. I had just the greatest coaches that were had my back throughout the entire time. It was just so much fun. But I would say it's definitely usually probably not attainable the way I was able to get it.
Now, besides doing the grunt work, are you actually learning useful things in this role? Particularly if you don't want to work in basketball.
Yeah, so like at the end of the day, I'll say that like like being a part of this college basketball team, it helped me mature and become like more of an adult. So like before I came to college, I wasn't the best, I didn't have the best grades, but then I learned like discipline and I learned like how to live on my own and like truly care about like what's going on. And so I'll say that college basketball actually like the coaching staff and like everyone there kind of helped mature me into the person I am today, which is why I'm so disciplined, have such a drive and such a passion for what I do. I definitely because of all the life lessons that I learned from these coaches. And like that's the other thing, like people don't really realize like a lot of the time they're like, oh well, these players are just coming just to play, which sometimes that's true, but a lot of these college coaches are here to help you move on in life and not just in the sport that you're playing in. And I'm grateful that these coaches didn't just, throw me to the side. They actually cared about my growth and my potential just as much as the star player on the team, which was obviously very appreciated.
So now, when you're betting, I guess any sport, what time of the day do you start betting, and how do you monitor the lines?
Yeah, so I'm writing articles. So I'm waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning every single day. I'm writing articles up until like 9, 10 o'clock, getting all that out of the way. Then the goal is to get to the gym. So I want to get to the gym early enough. Then by like 12, 12:30, I'm home eating lunch and I'm checking the markets and I'm betting from, 1 till, you know, 10, 12 o'clock. I'm a volume better now, and so I'm trying to find as many edges as possible every single day. And so even though the ROI might be just a little smaller than if I were a little bit more selective, I'm investing more money, and in turn, I'm still earning more money by investing more money, even though my ROI might be slightly less because I'm not as selective.
Now, like, what typical times of the day are the lines moving the most for college
So
basketball and then MLB?
yeah, so I'll definitely say like college basketball is like throughout the entire day. It's just ongoing, like nonstop. Like on like a Wednesday when there's so many games, or like Saturday, it's just it's just absolutely crazy. Especially with the I'll say like the first half over unders, but also some of the spreads move. Um, and it's just throughout the entire day. But I'll say like for like the NBA, for example, they kind of wait until like the injury reports are out, which is like say like 5, 6 o'clock is when you start to know like what players are in, what players are out, and as we know in the NBA, it can get very, it can get injury management or whatever you want to call these back to backs or whatever. Some of these players just don't want to play, and that opens up player props um, being a lot different on different sports books. And so I would say like 6, 7 o'clock for like a 7 o'clock game, for example, the player props would start to go all over the place, and that's when you can find a lot of the value for NBA player props.
Now,
And NFL the same way.
do you use any automated tools for the player props, or are you manually looking at each book?
Yeah, I use a site called OddsJam, and I'm on the platinum plan with OddsJam, and that's you know those guys have changed my life in terms of learning how to sports bet and just trying to find the best lines that you can get, and just be the sharpest sports bettor that you can be. So definitely recommend OddsJam for anyone that wants to get involved in sports betting. It tells you, it gives you so many great lines as long as you're you're looking, and you make the right decisions.
Yeah, I mean, Odds Jam, I hear from some critics of theirs that they say that it's not sustainable to be doing arbitrage or scalps because you're burning your accounts pretty quickly since the sports books will know when they've been had,
Yeah,
rather than looking to find out where there's a discrepancy between lines and just betting one side.
yeah, it's definitely possible. Like obviously there's
I mean,
ways.
does the subscription
Uh,
pay for itself?
yeah, yeah, it definitely pays for itself, and you can you can still make plenty of money and earn a high ROI. Like, yeah, can you bet 10 grand on a bet? No, but am I in the business to be doing that? Absolutely not. Anyway, I'm more about just being consistent and just trying to build my income. I'm not really worried about trying to hit the lottery or whatever. So as long as I can get in a solid amount of money on a bet, then that's fine with me because I'm young enough to just continue to build up my money. I'm not trying to win the lottery or do heavy parlays or whatever. I'm just betting straight, and I'm betting one unit on each play, and that's just that. So I understand those critics, and it's it's not, maybe it's not for everyone, but it's definitely for me, and definitely for beginners that want to build a bankroll for sure.
So you're betting one unit a game rather than Kelly staking, where you kind of,
Yeah,
have a different
yeah.
stake based on whatever your edge is.
Because here's the problem. I could have an edge at 3 o'clock during the day, but then by 7 o'clock the edge could change. It could the lines can change, something could happen, and I might have a less of an edge, and now I've been more on it. So for me, I just go straight with one unit, knowing that if I beat the closing line value at least 75% of the time, then I'm going to be fine with that one unit play.
So you're fine, I guess betting one unit because
Yeah.
even though you'll occasionally have like a really big edge, you're worried about the variance because you're doing so many plays.
Yeah, there's so much. There's variants like today. I already have like we go to like Western Kentucky Rice. I got it at minus 105 on the under 71.5, and now it's closed out plus 100. So I've lost 5 cents on that one. Um, Cornell Binghamton still minus 110 on the over 71.5. Now it's at minus 106 at the closing line. So I lost that, but at the time it was beating the closing line value. So that things change, but as long as you're just putting one unit down, then everything will just kind of even out at the end.
So now you're doing like some of the other sports too, not just college basketball. You do NFL, NBA. Like for the really busy times, specifically in the fall and winter, how do you keep up with everything?
Uh, I, I I just I don't. I just it's just I try to stay as disciplined as possible, and uh, I just try to. Like, for me, like I'm someone that rarely goes outside, like outside going to the gym. I try to just sports bet like every single time I get a chance to, um, and so yeah, I mean, I'm just I'm just going hard now so that I can live an exciting future, and retire early. But it's hard to keep up. You've just got to be as consistent as possible and treat it like your job, and make sure that you continue to move forward with sports betting every single day, and you don't really take any breaks. And that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, and you're doing pretty well at it because like you're a millennial and you just bought a house, you're getting married in a few months. I'm
Yeah,
going to be there at the wedding. It's
yeah.
going to be a lot of fun because a lot of people hear like, "Oh, I'm making income," and they're not going to know you and be like, "Oh, this guy's full of crap." And I'm just like letting them know
Well,
like you got some results out of this.
yeah. And like I'm on Picket, so like you could, a third party, you could track it and everything. And so yeah, it says I have a 6.06 ROI. So yeah, I mean, and that's off of looks like 7,000 bets. So there's that.
So
Um,
you got the sample size.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, it's with my strategy, it's volume over everything. So you want volume with an edge, and so when you place enough bets, you're going to see uh, the edge, come through. Like if you bet just 10 games and you're betting all of them, positive expected value betting, you're probably not going to get the actual amount of money that you're supposed to off of those 10 games. But if you do in the long run, you're going to be successful, and that's what I've learned. And it's true. I could throw it out there. It's true.
Now these sites that you write for, because I work for the game day, you work for other
Yeah.
sites. Do they ever step in and be like, "Whoa, this is useful info," but the affiliates that work for the site don't really want you publishing this out there?
For the most part, I'm just writing like game previews at this point, and so I don't really have that issue because I'm just really just writing about the game and giving out the bet where I find the best value, and like sometimes it does stink because sometimes uh, different sites will have you just give out they won't really let you get the best line, and they'll just say, well, it has to come from this or it has to come from that, and so but there's nothing you can really do. But I try my best to give out the best line, the best value, the best play, and I go with that. But yeah, I don't really ever have like where they say like, hey, you can't write this because I tried to like I try not to get into any of that garbage. I just try to just write out the game preview, the analysis, and then my pick, and then just move on.
Now, what type of hate mail do you get when you give out a pick and it loses, even if it's beats the closing line or has good logic? Like you're
Yeah,
pretty big on Twitter. Like, what sort of
yeah.
haters come at you?
Yeah, I know. So recently, if you guys have noticed, I rarely go on Twitter anymore because it's just so saturated with just crap. It's just a bunch of non-profitable bettors talking about how profitable they are and how great they are and how amazing their bet was when you know damn well that they lost their last 100 bets that they placed before that, when they try to do these parlays for like plus 3 million. Um, I mean, there's don't get me wrong. There's like 5% out there that are actually profitable and that you should listen to and that I respect. But now it's just getting to the point where it's just so saturated and it's just so many guys that like don't win at all. They say they're the best. They live in their mom's basement. They don't go to like they don't know like it's just so bad. And so now I kind of just got off of Twitter. I haven't really posted at all, and I'm kind of just doing my own thing. I have my little Dub Club subscription on the side, but I haven't marketed that in forever So I just have who I have, but those are the loyal people that understand sports betting that aren't just complete dicks about maybe going on a bad losing streak. And those are people that they've stuck with me long enough, so of course they've profited in the long run. So that's always good. But yeah, I'm over the whole Twitter sports betting thing. At this point, I got the people on my dub club that respect me, appreciate me, and understand what I bring to the table. I love those guys, but I'm not marketing that anymore. I do well enough just betting on sports and fending for myself. And if you're on the dub club, I'll help you. But if you're not, you can read my articles, and if you have questions on that, of course I would help out. But with Twitter, I can't do that anymore because people will just tell one play and then tell you that you're the worst sports bettor in the world, but you have forget it. It's just ridiculous. So good for them.
I just feel
They're
like
losing.
Twitter's evolved a bit because I remember like I first got on like during the pandemic. That was because I met you right
Yeah,
before the pandemic.
yeah, yeah.
So you were
That's when we
like
were taking
promoting me
off.
heavy
Yeah,
early on, which I appreciate.
yeah. We were taking off. Yeah,
And
that was fun.
you have the sharp community or the people who act like they're the sharp community, and they would just crap on anybody that is, still has stuff to learn. But now that you have all these media personalities just blowing up who aren't good sports bettors, now kind of the sharp community I've seen be less negative to each other because they're like, holy shit, we got this other
Yeah,
threat, which is
yeah,
even worse. And then the sharp community is also, meeting a lot more in person and working together. Like going to events like Bet Bash. I hope to see you at Bet Bash 3. I didn't see you at 1 or 2.
yeah. No, I haven't.
Or, just private messaging each other like, oh, what can we work on? But
Yeah.
essentially, you just have these people who are great personalities, but they aren't actually working at winning at betting in terms of understanding the markets. They just view it as something fun to do and picking who's going to win rather than trying to set a price and monitor the market.
Yeah, and if you're one of those that just do it out of enjoyment, then then it's fine if you want to just do it as entertainment and just lose money or whatever. Like at the end of the day, like if I'm gonna sit with friends and watch a game and bet $25 on it, it's the same as going to the bar and spending some money on drinks, which I wouldn't. I don't drink alcohol anyway, so I save my money there anyway. I could act like it was my drinking money, spend it on sports betting and enjoy it. But if that's something you want to do, then that's fine. And if you have a job that pays well or pays enough for you, and you just want to pay spend a little bit on sports betting, great. But for the people that are sharp and actually want to do this and make a living off of it, there's ways to do it. Um, and so yeah, you want to learn from the best. You and like even me, like or you, like there's still plenty of things that we can learn. And like you still throw out terms to me sometimes that I have no idea what the heck you're talking about. But like then I want to learn about it and try to figure out what the heck you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I've been noticing with gambling Twitter is that you get what you put into it. So if you're just dumping on people, eventually they're going to start dumping all over you.
Yeah,
But
that's
if people are dumping on you and you just kind of brush it off or you try and learn from them, they'll come back and end up being your ally on something. Like there's a couple people early on that would put me down and I would learn from them and now they follow me.
yeah, and
Or
yeah,
or they leave
we've
me
all had
alone or
haters.
whatever it is.
Yeah, no, we've all had haters and people that don't think that we're good at what we do. But you know, the reality is that those people that hate are probably the ones that are losing the most, and they want to take out their anger of losing on you because they're jealous of you because you're successful. So I mean, that's the reality of all the haters. Haters are ones that are jealous because they can't do what you're doing. So it's a good thing to have haters, but it does hurt your self esteem. Like it's not always fun. Like we're all human. Just like athletes when they're talked about being bad sports players and like people are mad that they lost the bet because of these guys not performing. Like we're all human, and like the negative energy is just pointless. Like just do you. If you're happy doing you, then great. But you don't need to tell somebody else that they suck because you suck. Like that's the reality of it. So
All right, so baseball season's coming up and are you like looking at any sort of new angles for this upcoming season? Or do you think you're expecting, more of the same this year?
Yeah, I'm expecting more of the same. I would love to know like what the baseballs are going to be, because I know we've heard rumors that they've changed the baseballs plenty of times, and they gave the Yankees the more juiced balls because of Aaron Judge. I don't know. So like I would like to know more about all of that if we could, but um, yeah, that's pretty annoying. But overall, I think I'll just probably end up doing what I did last year. Obviously, the worst teams in baseball still win 50, 60 games, right? So you definitely want to bet underdogs in the MLB. And when you see a team that's like a minus 500, don't freaking take it, because it's a good chance that they'll probably end up losing. That's how great baseball is. But yeah, just betting underdogs is crucial in baseball, and just be consistent. Obviously, it's a long season. Don't get down on bad streaks and good streaks. Don't get happy. It's a long season. Just let it play out, and if you have an edge throughout the season, then you're going to be profitable, of course.
I mean, baseball's crazy because of all the data. It makes it hard for someone who isn't like a data scientist and the variance. But on the other hand, it has the lowest theoretical hold of all the sports.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's the one sport where you can have a blind monkey picking games, and they're least likely to go bankrupt.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, you should try that. That should be that should be on another episode.
I mean, we could have a thing where we could say, can you pick better baseball picks than me flipping a coin?
Or that, yeah.
And I think the coin would win.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. That'd be extremely funny. That would get a ton of views. But yeah, I mean that's baseball for you. So I think baseball, like I said, just be consistent, and if you have an edge, eventually you'll have success. But just stay consistent in baseball. It's a long season, a very long season.
Now for baseball, like, how do you take account the injuries and their replacements, especially as a bettor who doesn't have a model?
And so I feel like in baseball, you have the most analytics and the most numbers to work off of. So if another player is coming in for that player, well, you can still have his numbers against a lefty or against a righty. I think that helps. I think baseball is the best because for me, like in terms of like analytics and whatever, maybe not like on like edges against like sports books and whatever, but I would say baseball is the easiest for me just because it's really 1 versus 1. So like basketball, 5 versus 5, football, you have multiple guys versus multiple guys, but baseball, it's really 1 versus 1. Of course, there's a fielder, but it's 1 versus 1. If a lefty is good against a against a left-handed hitter, then probably good chance of getting him out. So it's baseball, it's great for like probability and stuff like that. And I think that the analytics definitely show a bigger picture when it comes to this sport compared to any other sport. And I love looking at the most recent data. So I like looking at like the last 30 days, how have they performed in the last 30 days compared like against a right-handed batter or pitcher, whatever side you're looking at. And I think that helps a ton with breaking down the MLB, which is why that's my favorite sport to bet when I'm looking at like the analysis analytics side, writing articles and stuff.
Now, when you're looking through the analytics, do you ever look through the bullpen usage to say, okay, a lot of the lefties in the bullpen have been used, so maybe they're not when the starting pitcher gets taken out, if someone's weak against lefties, it's not as much of a worry because they'll either be facing. I guess who they're facing if the reliever is less random.
Yeah,
when who's been used recently.
So for me, like I was always big on team totals in the first 5 innings because of the bullpens. Like they screw the bullpens. I'm just going after these crappy pitchers in the first 5 innings because the reality is they're going to give lines of like over 2.5 in the first 5 innings. So do we really think do we think that crappy pitcher is going to pitch a quality start against a lineup that I think is going to be really, really good? Probably not. So therefore, I'm going after these first 5 team totals, and I'm saying this crappy pitcher is going to give up 3 runs in the first 5 innings. And if he does that, then I win my bet. So I think that's my favorite angle when it comes to sports betting in baseball. Now, of course, you can look at the bullpens and that stuff, and that's not something I really pay attention to most of the time. I'm still more worried about the starters and the lineup against the starters because we're not even at that point yet. So we don't even know if we'll get to that point. A pitcher can go 8 innings or whatever. So I think it's definitely a variable to look at, but it's not something I would really focus in on compared to like the starting pitcher and the actual lineups compared to the bullpens and the benches that or pinch hitters that might come in to face a pitcher or whatever. And a lot of times, like let's not get it mistaken. Like a lot of these times, these managers make bonehead decisions in the first place in the 7th, 8th, 9th innings anyway. So like now, like you're overthinking what they're thinking, and they're not thinking what you're thinking, and now the whole thought process just goes to crap because you weren't thinking what the manager was thinking, even though you think what you were thinking was better. It's like a riddle.
Also look at the lineup order too, because the top of the lineup matters the most early on.
Yeah.
The further you get down the game, the less it matters.
Yeah, 100%. And so if I see like that's why like there's teams out there like the White Sox or the Blue Jays, for example. These teams are all right-handed heavy the last couple of years. And so anytime that they would face lefties, it was like you'd have to take a real strong look at it because like their entire lineup is right-handed with a lot of power, and they're going up against a really bad lefty, like let's say a number 5 lefty for the opposition. So it's like, yeah, like I love to smack that. Like you have an entire right-handed lineup against a really bad lefty who gets smacked by righties, and all you need is 3 runs in the first 5 innings. Like of course you're going to want to take that. So that's the market that I've really appreciated the most since doing the MLB sports betting.
Jason, you have any last words for our listeners?
The biggest thing in sports betting is just stay consistent. You're going to have really bad trends. You're going to have some really great trends, but don't bet less because you're losing. Don't bet more because you're winning. Just stay consistent, find your edge, and bet away. And in the long run, you will be profitable, but you just got to keep going. And also, like, bet what you're able to lose, of course. Like, that's obviously bet responsibly. Like, don't be that guy betting your entire bankroll on one day. Like, that would not be smart. So definitely put your bankroll a little bit further down, or put your betting size unit down. If you're thinking about doing that, that'd be ridiculous. So yeah, just bet your edge and don't bet too much money. I think that's the biggest thing.
All right, Jason, thanks for coming on.
Big bomb bangers, boogie down picks. Bangers, big bangers, bomb boogie down picks. Bangers, big bangers, bangers, boogie down picks. Big bangers, bomb boogie down picks. Bangers, big bomb bangers, boogie.